So Season 14 of Diablo 4 is now on the PTR, and I wanted to take a look at the new Mythic gearing system that is a pretty big change for the game as a whole in terms of player power, and I also think is the best part of Season 14 so far, even though there are some pretty weird and big issues with certain parts of this system. And there's actually a bunch of different pieces to this system, some of which were explained by the developers differently than they're currently playing out on the PTR. I don't know if these are bugs in which some of this stuff shouldn't be able to be done like this, but I'm going to be going over how the system is right now on the PTR. So at a baseline, and this is probably the thing you will have seen, is that all unique items in the game can now randomly drop as mythic versions. Now the mythic versions of a unique item will have all of its affix being max rolled. This doesn't mean they're greater affix. This just means that they are max roll. So like the willpower on this necklace is 180. The roll would always be 180 there. Even though it shows the rolls it could possibly get, if it is a mythic version of a unique, it'll always be the max stat. And then on top of that, the special effect or the unique effect of the mythic is increased by 30%. And that is also always capped out. So I have a Blood Mad idol right here, and its damage roll goes up to 180%. If I look at the normal version of this, it only goes up to 150%, and this up to 150% roll on the normal unique can roll in the normal range. So the mythic versions of these uniques are essentially buffed up, maxed rolled versions of unique items. And also, I will say the new mythic effect on these items is really cool. This animated purple effect looks much cooler than just the old kind of static mythic purple effect. And they did also change how these mythics look on the ground as well. So you can throw it on the ground, and any mythic you get is now going to still show text like it's a unique, but it'll have the purple beam, and it'll have this little purple symbol on the left side showing you that it's a mythic. And as you may have noticed, as this is a Tyrael's Might, which is one of the old mythic items, that even the old mythic items are essentially the same as just mythic uniques now, because as we just went over, you can still get all of the normal uniques in the game as their normal unique rolls. Then you can also get them as their mythic variants that are essentially just much higher rolled versions of that. And then you have the old mythics, so things like Ring of Starless Skies and Tyrael's Might. These work in the exact same way as the new mythics. There just isn't a normal unique version of these. So just like the new mythics that are the upgraded versions of uniques, the old mythics now have randomly rolled stats, but because they are a mythic, they always have the high end roll of those stats. So like the life on hit of this Tyrael's Might right here is at 300. The max roll could get is 300. It will always be 300 on drop. And also a lot of these old mythics, like Tyrael's Might here, were pretty heavily rebalanced. Like you'll notice that it doesn't have a bunch of the unique affixes it used to have, because old mythics all had static rolls. There were no roll variants you could get on them. And because they were doing that on a lot of these old mythics, they also added one of the more important stats to its special effect. So Tyrael's Might's special effect now also gives the 20% damage reduction that used to be an affix roll on it. But outside of that, these old mythics are essentially the exact same as the new mythic upgrades of unique items. And like mentioned, they work exactly like the unique variants in that they have randomly rolled affixes. Now, all the old mythics will still have one affix that is a static roll on it. Like Tyrael's Might has a 25% resist to all elements. The Ring of Starless Skies has a 10% attack speed. But these stats don't roll any higher. If you look at a Ring of Starless Skies on live right now, its affix rolls are higher than you can get on normal rings. But in this new version, they are the same amount. So right now in live, if you go look at a legendary or unique ring and you say get attack speed on it, they can only get up to 10%. But if you look at a Ring of Starless Skies on live right now, the attack speed roll is much higher than 10%. So these really are pretty much the exact same as a normal unique items now. But there's actually one really big change to the unique system as a whole, and that's that you can roll these stats in the Herodra Cube. So in Season 13, so live of Diablo 4 right now, you can't roll the stats on mythic items or unique items at all. What you get is what you get, but going into Season 14, every mythic and unique item in the game, including the old mythics, you can use chaotic reroll and focused reroll. So I have Ethereal's Might here, and let's say I want to reroll the life on hit of this. Well, I can just use chaotic reroll or focused reroll and reroll whatever I want into a different randomly rolled stat. And this will work in the exact same way normal, legendary, or rare items you may be rolling on live right now. And the really big difference with the rolling or gear modification of uniques and mythics is that you can't actually use the enchant item system from the occultist. So normally on like legendary items, you really only have to go for like 3 stats at the cube, because you could just take your item to the occultist and roll the 4th stat that gives you much more accurate control at the stats you're getting, but you can't do that with uniques. So it is going to be a bit more random because you won't have as much control, but you are still able to roll affixes. Now, another quirk with the system right now in PTR, and I think this is probably something that is not intended, is that if you roll the stats on a mythic, that new affix you get will now not always be max rolled. So if you see I have 4 rolls on this ring, 3 of them are max rolled. That's because those are the rolls that came on them when it dropped, but I rolled one of the stats and it went to attack speed, and as you can see, the attack speed is only 8.7% with a max of 10%. So if you use chaotic reroll or focus reroll, the stats won't always be maxed out. I'm assuming that's a bug because that kind of defeats the entirety of the purpose of mythics even having max rolled stats, because you are almost always going to be rolling at least a couple of the stats in the cube with this new system. So my assumption is that that's just a bug right now in the PTR, and that is very much something that would commonly be bugged. And this system is permanent to the game, and at a baseline, how you actually get most mythics in the game is that when a unique drops as an ancestral unique, it just has a chance to be a mythic. And my presumption with how that's actually rolling is that you will have a higher chance to get a mythic version of a normal unique than we would normally have to get the old mythic items like Tyrael's Might. My assumption with that is also that because the old mythics like Tyrael's Might don't have a unique version, that these old mythics will still be more rare than the new mythics. I haven't done like any testing on the PTR for this, but this is my assumption with how everything about the system is played out so far. And on top of all of this, there is a new craft in the Herodra Cube that for right now is season specific, but this may be a craft that goes into the future that is upgrade to mythic. Now this takes a new seasonal currency and you can upgrade a unique to a random mythic of the same category. Now this is something that I can't see going live like this. So how this actually works is you can either upgrade a unique into a mythic, or you can just roll any mythic you already have into another one. Because how this actually works is depending on the item slot you're using, it will roll a random mythic in that category. So if it's a one-hander or an offhand and you use upgrade to mythic, it will roll any random one-hand or offhand that can be a mythic. If you do two-handers, it'll only be two-handers. But when you get to armor or jewelry, it gets much worse. Because if I roll a jewelry piece like this Blood Mad Idol right here, I do upgrade to mythic, it'll upgrade it to a random mythic that's a ring or a necklace, and I can just keep doing it, and it'll just keep randomly going through mythics that are of either of those slots, which for jewelry isn't super bad. It's still kind of bad, not super bad. But if I do it with a piece of armor, I take a mythic or a unique and I do upgrade to mythic, it can roll through any armor piece. That's 5 different slots. So my Tyrael's Might turns into Tassets of the Dawning Sky, turns into a helmet, turns into a chest piece, turns into some legs, turns into a pair of gloves. So this is definitely something that I see being changed unless they just give us a crazy amount of this seasonal currency, but we don't know how the balancing is going to be on live. Even if that's the case, I still think it would be better if they just removed these categories, and instead if you put an item into this and upgrade it to Mythic, it would just give you a random Mythic of that one slot. So if I upgrade to Mythic and roll it, it would only roll gloves. If I did it with boots, it would only roll through all of the options of boots. I think that would be much better, and all they would have to do is remove the categories off this and just maybe give less of this currency. I think that would be significantly better than putting an item in here, say an armor piece, and literally being able to get any random Mythic of any of the 5 armor slots. I think that's going to be too RNG intensive, and even if they give a ridiculous amount of this currency, you could still just be sitting here for a long time just spamming the roll button to try to get the item you want. I definitely think that's a change that they should make before the game goes live. Now, because all mythics are now in the same category, there's actually some changes to crafting mythics that's a bit interesting. Now, first off, you have a new seasonal craft that allows you to craft resplendent sparks, and it takes 7 of the new pandemonium fragments, which it takes 5 of these to upgrade an item to a mythic, and you can turn 7 into a resplendent spark. So you have a few different options. This is seasonal as of right now. Like I mentioned, the upgrade to mythic is seasonal, and this craft for resplendent sparks is also seasonal. We don't know if there's going to be a crafting option to upgrade items to mythic past season 14, but there may be. Then we also have the craft at the jeweler, where you can normally craft mythic items that takes resplendent sparks in some amount of runes depending on what you're crafting, and as you'll notice, it shows these as uniques right now, and that's because these are no longer crafting specific items. These are crafting a random item of a category. So let's say I craft a two-handed weapon right here. This will give me any two-handed weapon I can use as a mythic. And as of right now, it takes the exact same stuff it used to take. It takes the same amount of runes, and it takes 2 resplendent sparks. Now, resplendent sparks are going to be significantly more common in season 14. You'll probably have a decent amount of these pretty quickly, but the runes is really what's going to be the issue with crafting these specific slots, because runes are probably going to be much harder to get, at least in the quantities where you'll just be able to craft any amount of these that you would want. So realistically, runes are actually going to be the thing holding you back, which is usually the case, but usually resplendent sparks also aren't like super crazy common or anything like that either. And that's actually not all, because you also have the random mythic roll at the blacksmith. And what's interesting about this is actually a different craft. This is basically the same it is in live right now, where you take 2 resplendent sparks, 50 million gold, and it'll give you a random mythic. This is random iconic mythics. Now, this is weird that they are using this name for these items, because iconic mythics are supposed to be the old mythics. So Ring of Starless Skies, Tyrion's Might, anything that was a mythic previously to season 14 should be an iconic mythic, but on the tooltip of the item, it doesn't actually say that anywhere. But if you go and use this craft, it will only give you these iconic mythics or the previous mythics. So I crafted 5. I got Tyrion's Might, I got Endariel's Visage, I got 2 Endariel's Visage, I got another Tyrion's Might, and I got a Doombringer. So this craft specifically only gives you the old mythics. So this does allow a few different ways to get the different mythics depending on which one you're actually looking for. So it'll actually be significantly easier than it's ever been to get the old mythics. But these old mythics are in the same category as any of the mythic items now, so they're not going to be as valuable. But if you're specifically looking for one of these old or iconic mythics for your build, you can definitely get one of these much more easily. And that also brings me to salvaging. Now, salvaging items is going to work the same no matter what type of mythic it is. So let's go and salvage a Doombringer. Now, this will give me 1 resplendent spark, it will give me some Forgotten Souls and some baleful fragments. The thing we care about is Forgotten Souls. And then if we go salvage any other mythic, so this is a Waxing Gibbous, which is usually only a unique that can be a mythic with the new system. I salvage this, it'll give me the exact same thing. So for salvaging purposes, a mythic is just a mythic. And because any ancestral unique item can now just randomly drop as a mythic, you should be getting a lot more mythics than we've ever gotten, meaning again, you should be getting a lot more resplendent sparks, which should just allow you to get a lot more of the iconic mythic rolls if that's something you're still looking for your build. And with that being said, I think these are actually going to be less impactful than they have have ever been in previous seasons. So you're going to care a lot more about unique items that are turned into mythics than you are about the old iconic mythics. But that's pretty much everything you need to know about the new mythic system coming to season 14 of Diablo 4. Like I mentioned, this is a permanent system outside of the couple seasonal things we went over. So I'm very curious on what your opinions are on the system. I generally like it. I actually really like the ability for uniques to be upgraded versions of themselves. I do like that we can now roll the affixes on these uniques, even though I do think it would still be much better if there was at least a couple unique affix rolls on all of the uniques that were specific to that unique to make the items stand out more and make them more unique as the name would entail. But I do think this is just an upgrade of our current unique system in season 13. But that's all I want to go over, so thanks for watching.